This is one of my favorite tattoos. I know it might look janky or poorly done to some, but that's only because I did it myself because I'm insane. It's based on my favorite work of art, Dove of the Holy Spirit, within the throne of St. Peter's in St. Peter's Basilica of Vatican City. It's done in a geometric, iconographic style, intended to reflect symmetry and balance and not stand out as harshly as a shaded, realistic tattoo would. Now, I've briefly talked about it before, but I'm not a Christian anymore, believing instead in a more secular form of spirituality, but I was raised in the church and have always loved Christian art and history and wanted to use Christian symbolism to express bigger concepts that I believe in. What I love about the concept of the Holy Spirit is that it is often described as an abstract spiritual experience, a felt presence that can transcend the worldly, making it in some ways distinct from the Father and Son, but I know Christians would strongly disagree with that. I personally love it when God is expressed as more of an abstract spiritual concept versus a physical human projection, because I'm fascinated by the notion of divine experience over divine personhood, like the experience of oneness, the sublime, or the Holy Spirit. Anyways, I'll explain more about my tattoos later on, but for those who may not know by now, this one is actually on my face. Like the physical art I also make, I've always wanted to sort of mythologize my life, transforming my experiences and face into a work of art that tells a story. Not only did I decide to get tattoos on my face, but I also did them all myself, which I think is a great segue to talk about not giving a fuck and truly embracing authentic self-expression. In this video, I want to talk about how not giving a fuck, dissolving your sense of self-importance and living in the moment can instantly give you a better quality of life and even alleviate your depression. We'll talk about self-expression and how your fear of judgment is getting in the way of being your authentic self, social media, and how it causes many of us, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, to become hyper aware of everything we do, which limits us. And lastly, how understanding that you aren't as important as you think can paradoxically lead to real happiness.
You overestimate your influence.
Now, for those who may not know, I tattooed my face when I was still in high school and gradually added more to them over the years, eventually getting to the final form they are in now. And to the shock of many people probably watching, yes, I don't regret them, at least yet. Now, this isn't to say I think everyone should get that tattoo they were questioning or that you should also tattoo your face, but just from a bigger picture that there is freedom in embracing your authentic self. Honestly, I just felt like who better to talk about not giving a fuck than the guy who tattooed his face in high school. Now, I know at times I can be critical of hyper-individualism because it encourages narcissism and destroys community, but it can also be argued that embracing a healthy amount of individualism is freeing in terms of unleashing authentic self-expression. I honestly don't think that you can live a truly happy, fulfilling life without first understanding, accepting, and expressing who you are without obsessing over backlash or judgment. The thing is, though, a lot of people think being unapologetically yourself shouldn't come with backlash, or that the people who choose to do it only do it because they don't face judgment. But I see that as a can't have your cake and eat it too type situation. You can conform and sacrifice authenticity for acceptance, or you can be yourself and deal with possible judgment. The way I see it is that people are going to judge and talk shit no matter what, no matter how much you conform, or no matter how unique you are, so why not just be authentic anyways? Like, y'all, the amount of hate I get, mostly online, but when I used to have a lot of followers on Instagram and the like SoundCloud days where everyone thought I was a SoundCloud boy, like, it's honestly insane. And even when I tell my family or friends, it's almost like they get offended because what people don't understand is no matter how much you appreciate someone or how they dress or their style, and you can't imagine that people could hate on it, there is always people like that in the world. And specifically for me, I don't know what the fuck it is about French people, but I remember when I was in high school and I would post selfies, I would open up my selfie on Twitter, 40,000 retweets, and then, 20,000 quotes of French people specifically just trying to like make me kill myself. Like, I don't know what it was about them. They hated me so much. Honestly, if my tattoos didn't have such deep personal meaning that reflect things I'm obsessed with and really believe in, and if I didn't really know who I was and wasn't confident in who I am, then I probably really would have sunk into a lot of depression and probably regretted them right away and just started fiending for acceptance or validation from all these strangers. But this brings me to my next point about having a strong sense of self and character. Now, I know not everyone is able to have a strong sense of self due to personality disorders or trauma, so this clearly isn't a one shoe fits all type approach. But what I will say is that for a lot of people, in order to radically be yourself, you really have to be confident in who you are as a person. For some, that's an easy thing to do and just comes naturally, but for most, that takes time and experience to really embrace. One thing people have always asked me in all the places I've lived is, how are you able to be so confidently yourself without even thinking about what the fuck other people think? And honestly, I don't even think it was a choice, but just more of a natural personality trait due to my upbringing. I was the only boy out of three and the only one who had my own room growing up. My family also moved around quite a bit due to my dad's job, which kind of forced me to understand at a young age that you can't always take stability or the people you get close with for granted. These pressures kind of forced me to sit with myself and get to know who I am and what I like. And I now think if I was in a more stable environment, constantly driven by FOMO and chasing my friends because I was scared to be alone, I would have been much more of a conformist and less in touch with myself as I am now. This is where some may point to the downsides of collectivism or the idea that community can be too restrictive and force conformity, making many feel like they have less agency in their life. I personally just think you should have a good balance between the two, with individualism encouraging authenticity and self-discovery, and community providing strong social support and a genuine sense of fulfillment. So all this is to say, yes, friends, community, and stability are obviously important, but I definitely think a good balance between company and solitude can also be healthy. Understanding yourself helps you make healthier choices and eventually builds confidence, so you are then less affected by the opinions of others. Like I said, I think most people crave constant social connection over solitude because, again, we are social creatures. Like, when I think about it, almost every sibling I have, family member, friends I've ever had tend to always chase bad company over being alone because they'd rather be around people. But in the back of my head, I always thought it's almost like a cope. It's almost like how people drink or smoke. It's a way to distract them from their own problems, their own thoughts. They truly don't know what it's like to be alone. They've either always been in a relationship or they've always been with a friend. I think being that type of person erodes independence and can definitely stifle personal growth. But the thing about all of this is, in today's world, social media has seriously altered how people grow up, how they perceive themselves, and especially how alone our alone time really is. Like, I honestly think early Gen Z and millennials got the best of social media because we got to kind of have the best of both worlds, where we had a normal childhood. We knew what it was like to not be connected or on a screen all day. It really grounds us and gives us this perspective of what life was like before everything was so divisive, before people were all depressed because of algorithms. Teenagers today, and even some adults, are the iPad kids we all joked about growing up, and I think we can now see how this perpetual onlineness is affecting the newer generations. Some of the shit I see kids saying in comments and what they bully each other about is honestly so crazy and nitpicky and unnecessary, and it really helps me understand why so many younger people today are literally terrified of going out or being themselves or even just posting online. And I just think this is all really affecting how kids grow up. Like, I don't think people really understand that the saying, "it takes a village to raise a child," is literal, and even thought to be one of the reasons humans tend to be so empathetic. Human children take a lot of time and resources to mature compared to other animals, making it impossible for a single person to raise them. This put evolutionary pressures on us to be more empathetic and cooperative to ensure our offspring survive. Anyways, that cooperative caregiving has mostly broken down due to hyper-individualistic Western societies, which means a lot of kids growing up now don't have strong social support, which would have typically instilled confidence as they developed. They instead now look towards social media and artificial social bonds driven by negativity-based algorithms that disrupt their ability to have a safe space for genuine childhood personality development. Social media has altered society in incredible ways, but I also think just the easy access to cameras and the selfie play a huge role in insecurities as well. Like before the smartphone, people rarely had a digital self-perception with how they mentally perceive themselves being tied to the reflection in a mirror. And we all know that a mirror can be far more forgiving than a smartphone 4K camera. This, along with the population that increasingly feels the need to document almost everything they do, has led to a generation of hyper self-awareness. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are hyper aware of themselves in ways that I think can be hard for previous generations to really understand. The amount of information we see daily, especially the negativity or perfect lives everyone has, really affects how we view ourselves or how confident we can be and limits people's ability to be authentic. It really does create a mob mentality environment where everything becomes a number and opinions, facts, or what's socially acceptable becomes defined by likes and comments. Again, how many times have you seen someone you thought was really cool only to open the comments and see everyone tearing them down with thousands of likes? When you are young and impressionable, that will really affect how you choose to express yourself and your fear of judgment. Not to sound like a broken record, because I know I talk about it so much, but I think the only solution to this is to have boundaries with social media, not use it as much, or just really understand and be mindful that what you see is algorithmically intended to divide and spread negativity. Maybe I'll make another video about it, but I spent almost 9 months without social media, and I will say I didn't realize how much all those negative posts and comments affected how I viewed myself or how I thought until I stopped using it. It's like overnight I stopped comparing myself to thousands of strangers and felt way more confident. I obviously use social media now, but I'm actually surprised with how much being off of it permanently changed my perception of it. Like, I honestly thought as soon as I got back on that everything would go back to how it was before, but the opposite happened. Now I'm far more mindful of bots, trolls, when I'm comparing myself to others unnecessarily, or how my algorithm is trying to troll and irritate me for engagement. So I definitely recommend quitting social media at least temporarily so you can get this outside perspective, and then that will help you build genuine confidence. The last thing I want to talk about to really tie all these points together is how minimizing your perception of your ego can help you be far happier. Now, I know ego is kind of a dirty word. Like, most of us subconsciously don't want to think that any of us have an ego or that we focus too much on it because, you know, those are the crazy narcissists that you see in movies. That's not me. But in some ways, we have all been raised in this cultural environment that convinces us that our own suffering, successes, desires, and individuality should be prioritized above everything else. Western American culture is inherently very individualistic, and social media accelerates that, so it's inevitable to affect all of us to some degree. We tend to think all the things we experience in life, whether good or bad, are unique to us because we don't really have as many social bonds anymore, which can cause us to isolate ourselves and distort how we perceive our problems or our place in the world. For example, if you're going through a hard time, you might subconsciously victimize yourself to the point of catastrophizing, feeling like you have no way out because you aren't aware that many others are also going through what you are experiencing and have even been able to get through it. Another example is how we are so in our heads, so unknowingly focused on our lives and how others perceive us, that we sometimes place unrealistic importance on ourselves. A good example of this is being hyper aware of your behavior in public because you feel as though there is a spotlight on you, or like everyone is focusing on every little mistake you make, when in reality, life is so complex and busy that most people are too worried about their own problems to even notice you. Now, this isn't to minimize the very real experience of having social anxiety or how bullying can kind of rewire your brain to just assume everyone is perceiving you in a negative way. Obviously, bullying can be very traumatic, and that's definitely something I would recommend going to therapy for. But for those who are young, I would also point out that once you are out of high school, that type of ignorant behavior tends to be a lot rarer, and that most adults do not have the time to spend on perceiving and judging you. But one thing I will say about this does kind of apply to me maybe a bit more than others because look at me. And even though I've had these tattoos for 6-7 years now, I know that people look at me and it's so obvious to the point that every time I'm with friends or family, they point it out because they notice how everyone's staring and they make it very obvious. But yeah, just pointing it out, this does actually kind of apply to me no matter what. I've just learned to deal with it. You can't control what others think about you, and you should focus more on what the ones you care about think instead of some random stranger that you will never see again. Maybe I'm just getting older, but I still don't think many people realize how much social media and hyper individualism influences how we perceive ourselves and others, and how it really limits our quality of life. I guess this is all to say that spending healthy amounts of time alone, really getting to know yourself, being mindful of others' judgment and knowing it is inevitable, and shifting your perspective from the importance of the self and validation to the importance of social bonds will do wonders for confidence and happiness. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, because so many people always ask me, is how do you build a community in today's world? Or how do you meet people and make new friends, especially being young? And what I would suggest, as crazy as it might sound to you, move to a city, get a job in retail, not big and corporate. Make sure it's a small store, like 1 to 2 employees small, because that will help you have intimate conversations with customers. Now, anyone who knows me knows I can talk anyone's ear off about everything and anything. It's a reason I made this channel. But even if you aren't naturally talkative or like me, a good retail job will get you out of your shell and teach you good social skills. Like, I worked at a smoke shop for 2 years, and the amount of connections, friends, and just community building I did while there was honestly incredible. After 6 months, I knew the entire street, and people would bring me free food or gifts or just come in to chat for hours. And I really did feel a part of something bigger, which gave me this entirely different perspective on life. Not only did I love meeting others and hearing their stories, but they also taught me things about myself and even altered how I perceived myself in more positive ways. Hearing compliments all day from these different types of friends and finding purpose and helping others can literally do crazy wonders for confidence and fulfillment. So I definitely recommend trying that out if you want to meet others or build community or even just sharpen your social skills. And just so you all know, because I harp on this a lot, once I make good money from YouTube, I'm still planning on having a small retail job at like a niche store or coffee shop 1 or 2 days a week, because to this day, that smoke shop job is still the most fulfilling I have ever had. Meeting people all day and having deep conversations with strangers while getting paid is literally the best. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I hope you have a good day.